Israel receives Agam burger from Red Cross amid Gaza truce detainee exchange. The detainees' media office confirms Palestinian detainees will be released at 3 p.m. GMT. And Ahmed al-Shara becomes Syria's interim president. It's exactly 4 p.m. Car local time and you're watching Qnews. We begin today's bulletin with the latest developments in Gaza. The Israeli army has confirmed receiving detainee Agam Berger from the Red Cross as part of the Gaza ceasefire agreement. Earlier, the Red Cross took custody of Berger in Beit Lahya, northern Gaza. An elite military unit and Israeli intelligence community agents are currently escorting her back to Israel for a medical evaluation. That comes as the two returning Israeli hostages, Arbel Yehud and Gad Moses, will be reunited with their families, while the 5 returning foreign nationals will be met there by Thai government officials. As part of the third phase of the detainee swap, 3 Israeli nationals and 5 Thai nationals are being freed. In exchange, Israel will release 110 Palestinian detainees, including minors, women, and those serving life sentences. The Israeli army has announced that the Red Cross has informed them of receiving 7 detainees from Qnews. Among the detainees are Israeli Arbel Yehud and Gad Moses, along with 5 foreign workers. The group is currently en route to Israeli forces inside Gaza. According to Qnews, the detainees arrived in Qnews under heavy security before their transfer. Hamas says the large Palestinian crowds gathering in Qnews and Jabalia during the detainee exchange reflect resilience and defiance. The group states that the release of Israeli detainees from various locations sends a message of steadfastness. Hamas has halted the exchange as a victory and expects more Palestinian detainees to be released today. Israeli National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir says images from Gaza prove the operation was not a complete victory, but a failure. He criticized the detainee exchange deal as unprecedented and accused the Israeli government of choosing a path of surrender. Detainees' media office has reported that after coordination with mediators, the Palestinian detainees will be released at 3 p.m. GMT. Earlier, Israeli media has reported that the Palestinian detainees will be released overnight. Israeli radio also reported buses with detainees are heading back to Israel's Offer prison. 110 Palestinian detainees, including 30 children, are set to be released in exchange for 3 Israeli and 5 Thai captives. U.S. Middle East envoy Steve implementation. Meanwhile, US President Donald Trump hopes to leverage the deal into the broader regional accord. And for more analysis on the situation, we now move on to Salma Marwan in our newsroom. Salma.
Thank you, Rana. And for further analysis on the situation in Gaza, we're joined from Cairo by Editor-in-Chief of Al-Shuruq newspaper and Egyptian Senator Ahmed Eldin Hussein. Mr. Ahmed, thank you so much for joining us. And first off, Israel is set to release 110 Palestinians today. In light of this, could you provide more details on the Palestinian detainees set to be released in this phase?
Peace be upon you all. According to what has been announced, the Israeli government, the release of the Palestinian prisoners was postponed following the release of the Israeli detainees, protesting that they are a hardship of the scene of the release. And I think that the Palestinian prisoners were already on board of the buses. They're supposedly to be transferred from the prison to their houses in the West Bank. But there was a postponement of the release, and the goal is more of procrastination and the submission to the hints and the threats of the Israeli extremist leaders such as Gumtrich and Bin Ghafir. As I've heard in a few minutes ago through your news, that the scenes coming from Gaza is affecting the internal Israel by division, and Bin Ghafir consider it as a surrender. This scene predicts us to the Israelis' behavior in the future, as in the first phase, postponing the release of Israelis. So what is going to be done for the second phase? Most probably they will to do the same aggressions against the Palestinians as they did before.
No, sir, sorry for cutting in, but in your view, why do you think Hamas has characterized this exchange as a victory for the Palestinian cause?
As many know, that the Prime Minister of Israel made the slogans of the aggressions against Gaza, on top of which the rooting out Hamas and the leaders. He never achieved such as this. Therefore, when the Palestinian resistance succeeded to get the Palestinian prisoners and to release the Israeli detainees through negotiation and politics, not militarily, this would affect the image of Netanyahu before his people and his coalition. In addition, that Israel never thought about it as much, which is the symbolic scenes where the Palestinian resistance to get out once or two times from the refugees, particularly in Jabalia and then in Khan Yunis and at El Sinwar house, wearing a Palestinian uniform. So they wish to say to Israel that it was still strong.
Now, sir, building on this, I would like to shed light on Agam Berger, who was released by Hamas today in Beit Lahia. What is the significance of her release, and what implications does it have for the ceasefire agreement?
If I could heard it right, you're talking about Arbel Ehud. There was an argument whether they are.
No, sir, I was talking about Agam Berger, who was released today by Hamas in Beit Lahia. Agam Berger.
This captives, Beit Lahia, as we all know, is mostly close to the Israel, the territories of 1948. As Israel proclaimed that they controlled and freed it from the Palestinians. When it done that way, it's a symbolic feature by the Palestinians, as they are capable or to put the captives maybe under the sight of the Israeli through their intelligence and the U.S. assistance. Despite all of that, never managed to reach them.
Mm-hmm. Now, Donald Trump has appointed U.S. Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff to oversee the ceasefire agreement, and he's currently in Tel Aviv. What does the presence of him in Tel Aviv indicate for the broader peace process?
I did not hear the question right.
I was talking about how Donald Trump appointed Steve Witkoff as the U.S. Middle East envoy, and he's currently in Tel Aviv to oversee the ceasefire agreement. What does his presence in Tel Aviv indicate for the broader peace process?
Certainly. I believe that Steve Witkoff, the U.S. envoy in the Middle East, wouldn't have a role of the exchange swap as the process being agreed upon in details, and its obstacles will be tackled through the Egypt established monitoring room. But the core point is that his envoy is exploring the process of the second phase. Donald Trump personally is able to play a great role, and his envoy would tackle or explore the things in the ground, and the main cause is the occupation, not the Palestinian in Gaza. He has a statement that was very strange. I'm talking about the envoy of USA by saying if Jordan and Egypt rejecting the idea of displacing or taking the Palestinians, so that they have to search for alternatives, which is very strange. Supposedly U.S. As the Palestinian as the Israeli supporter, so they should search for the alternative. Israel is the one encourage Palestinian occupied, so it is not realistic to request from the Palestinians to be deported and ask from Egypt and Jordan to receive them. So, and Egypt's position was very clear and crystal by receiving the Kenyan of president by saying that Egypt is not going to accept and to participate in receiving the Palestinian because as it is unjust for the Palestinian.
Now, sir, following the Israeli government's outrage over the transfer of Israeli detainees to the Red Cross, is Tel Aviv trying to create a pretext for potentially not complying with the remaining phases of the agreement?
Naturally, Israel is trying to proclaim and accusing Hamas and the Palestinian resistance as creating a very false reasons of the occupation and aggression. So there is I'm not wondering of creating more reason. The issue in Israel that there is a far-right coalition in the government, and the second point, the international community, particularly the United States, is leaving Israel doing as they like and threaten the Middle East. So therefore, even if some would disagree with Hamas, and I am personally, I do, but confronting the occupation is by the resistance, is under the international law. But when the things are reversed and the Palestinian people is the problem, not the occupation. So now we are facing a very strange matter.
From Cairo, that was editor-in-chief of Al-Shuruq newspaper and Egyptian Senator Ahmed Al-Din Hussein, Qnews. And now we're going to move back to Rana in the studio.
Thank you very much, Salma. And now we move on to Israeli forces have intensified military operations in Jenin, causing mass casualties, displacement, and widespread destruction, sparking global outrage. Al Qnews reports that 4 fuel trucks entered Gaza from Egypt today. These trucks are part of a larger aid convoy of 190 trucks carrying medical and food supplies. The aid has entered through the Karam Abu Salim and Al Aouja crossings, preparing for distribution inside Gaza. In recent days, hundreds of thousands of Palestinians have returned to northern Gaza. According to the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, more than 376,000 Palestinians have made the journey from the south. For many, this marks the first time they have been able to return home since being displaced in October 2023. Israeli forces have intensified military operations in Jenin, causing mass casualties, displacement, and widespread destruction, sparking global outrage.
Israeli occupation forces have escalated military operations in Jenin, resulting in numerous casualties and the displacement of thousands of Palestinian residents. The offensive, described by Israel as a counter-terrorism operation, included drone strikes that killed at least 6 people and injured 35, according to Palestinian health authorities. The assault also led to the destruction of key roads, cutting off access to the Jenin refugee camp and the main public hospital. Around 2,000 families were forced to flee due to the heavy bombardment. Jenin's governor, Kamal Abu Rub, described the situation as dire, citing severe damage to infrastructure and growing humanitarian concerns. Israeli officials argue that these military actions aim to enhance security in the West Bank. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu emphasized that the operation in Jenin aligns with Israel's broader strategic objectives. The escalation has sparked international condemnation. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres warned that any Israeli annexation of the West Bank would be a severe violation of international law. He voiced deep concerns over the ongoing violence, including airstrikes and settlement expansion, which continue to destabilize the occupied territories.
For the 10th consecutive day, Israeli forces continued their assault on Jenin and its refugee camp, leaving 17 Palestinians dead and dozens others injured. The offensive has also caused a complete power outage and a severe water shortage. Officials report that water has been cut off from about 35% of the city and camp due to damage to the Saada well, the main water resource in the area. The Organization of Islamic Cooperation has condemned the ongoing escalation of Israeli military actions in the West Bank. The OIC also denounced the continued assault on Jenin and its refugee camp, attacks by settlers on Palestinians and their properties, widespread infrastructure destruction, and the installation of hundreds of military checkpoints and iron gates at the entrances to Palestinian cities and towns. An Israeli airstrike has killed 10 Palestinians in Tubas and the occupied West Bank. The Palestinian Red Crescent confirmed the strike targeted the northern West Bank city. Israel has intensified its operations in the West Bank since the Gaza ceasefire took effect on January the 19th. The Palestinian death toll in Gaza since October the 7th, 2023 has risen to 47,417, with another 111,571 others injured. Despite the implementation of the first phase of the Gaza ceasefire agreement, casualties in the Strip continue to increase. Israeli forces have barred Palestinian Red Crescent crews from operating in front of the society's headquarters in Tulkarm, ordering them to leave immediately and not return. Meanwhile, the military offensive in Tulkarm city and its refugee camp continues for the fourth consecutive day. Israeli forces are conducting raids on homes, residential buildings and businesses, turning them into military outposts, while widespread destruction of infrastructure and property is reported. The UNRWA headquarters has been abandoned after staff left ahead of two Israeli laws set to take effect Thursday, banning the agency from operating in occupied East Jerusalem. The bans passed by Israel's legislature in October also threatens UNRWA's operations in the West Bank and Gaza, where it serves as a lifeline for around 2 million Palestinians, many displaced by the ongoing Israel-Hamas war. In Shuwayfat camp, refugee camp, where municipal services are absent, UNRWA remains the primary provider of the free health care and education. UNRWA Commissioner General Philippe Lazzarini has warned of a catastrophic consequences if Israel proceeds with its planned ban on the agency's operations. Speaking to UN ambassadors in New York, Lazzarini cautioned that the legislation threatens millions of Palestinian lives and could jeopardize Gaza's fragile truce. Established in 1949, UNRWA provides essential humanitarian aid, education and health care to Palestinian refugees in the West Bank, Gaza, Jordan, Syria and Lebanon.
Jeopardizing prospect for peace and security.
Moving on to Syria, where the Military Operations Administration has appointed Ahmed al-Shara as president during the transitional period. Spokesman Hassan Abdel Ghani confirmed that al-Shara will serve as an interim president and represent Syria in international forums. He also announced that the immediate dissolution of all military factions and revolutionary political bodies, integrating them into state institutions. Additionally, the military administration stated that al-Shara will establish a temporary legislative council. And that brings us to the end of our bulletin. Here's what we have been covering. Israel receives Agam burger from Red Cross amid Gaza truce detainee exchange. The detainees' media office confirms Palestinian detainees will be released at 3 p.m. GMT. And Ahmed al-Shara becomes Syria's interim president. This concludes our news bulletin for the hour. Don't forget to follow Qnews on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram and TikTok at QNewsEG to stay informed. Thank you for watching and stay tuned for more updates on Qnews.